However, what have you done to improve the lives of the working poor and make sure they have some money in their pockets? And I'd like to have some specifics, because I've spent some time recently with the working poor, and to me, they're pretty poor, and they're working damn hard.
I paid it off once and for all. Now, they took the $30 million away. $10 million went for illegals, or I call asylum seekers. I think biggest problem in our state, and I'll explain that if you want.
Shame on you!
Now, asylum seekers have not come from other countries. The refugees have come from other countries. There's a difference.
Shame on you!
There are three types. There are three types.
Where do they come from if they don't come from other countries?
Texas, Arizona, Georgia. You want me to go on? Now,
we are going to shut down the town hall if we cannot be respectful. If you would like to leave the building, you're more than welcome to do so.
Now,
Not be respectful.
there are three types of refugees: primary, secondary, and asylum seekers. Now, the overwhelming majority of asylum seekers in the state of Maine are people that have come from foreign countries and gone to other states and have ended up in Maine for a couple of reasons. But one of them is we are very, very good at providing welfare to anybody who comes to Maine. Number one, a primary welfare, a primary refugee. Does anybody know what they are? Would you know, Representative? A primary refugee is someone that through the State Department has been vetted, given a medical assessment, and sent to a foreign country, into our country, to a specific location, like Portland, or like Georgia, like Dallas, Texas. Very specific. That's a primary refugee. A secondary refugee is a person who is sent to Atlanta, Georgia, but they got relatives in Maine, or they got friends in Maine, and for whatever reason, they decide to come to Maine. That's a secondary. Now, a primary refugee, the federal government would allot money up to 18 months to take care of that individual. 18 months. A secondary refugee that went to Atlanta to take care of the refugee that moved, became a secondary, the money doesn't follow them. It stays where they were originally planned to go. That's a secondary refugee. They also have been given a medical assessment and all been properly vetted, we hope, and they get to the U.S. Now the asylum seekers. Asylum seekers, and I know these people scream and holler, but this is the facts. An asylum seeker, overwhelming majority of asylum seekers in Maine are people that came here on a visa, visiting visa, student visa, different types of visas, and they overstayed them. That's an asylum seeker. Big problem. No federal money and no medical assessment. That's the problem. And what happens is you get hepatitis C, tuberculosis, AIDS, HIV, the Ziki Fly, all these type of other foreign diseases that find their way to our land, and we don't have any assessment. We don't have any medical history. And if you look at if you look at our cities, we have an uptick in those many diseases. We have upticks in Portland, we have upticks in Los Angeles, we've got upticks in Bangor, and we have some in the rural areas as well. One of the biggest problems that we're not realizing is some of these diseases are not reacting to the current antibiotics. So it is an issue. It is an issue that we need to deal with. Hepatitis C, $108,000 to cure. HIV, $90,000 a year in medication. Can't cure it, but you can treat it. Medication is about $90,000 a year. Those are all monies that come away from the real poor people that are struggling living here in the state of Maine that cannot get services because we have to deal with more than our fair share. When I came governor of the state of Maine, 29 people of our populace were on one form or another of welfare. We've managed to get some people off SNAP. Those aren't people that qualify. We find some people fall through the cracks, and when we identify them, we get them services. Aspire. People think that it's a great thing. We have cases where a woman gets daycare 40 hours a week, works half a day. We have those situations around the state. We have to identify them, and we've got to get the services to the people that need it most without defrauding the state. Now, are most people honest? Yes. I'll be the first one to say that 95% of the people on services need them and take care of them. They don't complain, they move on. Some of them we can help them off and they get a new life and they do well. Others don't. The problem is those who defraud the state are very, very expensive because they do it for a long time. For instance, young man in Kissimmee, Florida, we call him up. Are you going to be moving back to Maine? Hell no, I've been living in Florida 2 years. Gets SNAP, and he gets an EBT card loaded every month, resident of Maine. So it comes out of the Maine budget, but he's a Florida resident. Those people are very expensive because they're taking away from those who want to live and take care of their family here in Maine. The majority, the 5 cities where the majority of that money I told you is gone between midnight and 3 a.m., 5 cities. The Bronx, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Kissimee and Las Vegas. 5 top cities where EBT cards are spent. Stay there.
I wanted to ask you a question about the biomass.
Okay, fine.
May I?
But there's other representatives who would like to speak.
Thanks, Adrian. So, I know we've both received reports about the logging industry and the biomass industry. As many as 800 jobs are at stake if we don't do something.
It's more than 2,500.
So, additionally, we've seen hundreds of jobs lost in the pulp and paper industry, some of our traditional industries in Maine. What I want to ask of you is what plan can you and I work on together that's actually proactive? There are too many things that we disagree about, including many comments that were made tonight. But what can we do together to actually do something about jobs so that we're not arguing about people on welfare or people who need help moving out of poverty?
Well,
I have a question.
There's two or three things you can do. One is you got to stop the silliness about anecdotal arguments. Number 2 is while there's 2,500 people in biomass industry right now, there's 800 or maybe even more than that. They're going to lose their jobs by May 1st. And that's because most of the biomass plants in the state of Maine are no longer functioning. A couple things you can do. You can help us change the energy picture and allow biomass to be a renewable, since biomass grows trees. And trees are like a garden. So that's one thing. The 100 megawatt limitation in the state of Maine is the most horrific law and regulation. I talk to people around the country and they laugh at me. They say, you're kidding me. So that you know what I'm talking about. If we buy 100 megawatts of electricity from hydro, it's considered renewable green. But if I buy 101 megawatts of electricity, it's brown. They lose their value. It's insane. It's the same thing with any other form of energy. The only 2 energies in Maine that do not have a regulation on are wind and solar.
They don't work.
So I'll give you some more places we can work. Regulations. We need, and I've been asking this of your superiors now for 5 years, let's look at what your bosses in Augusta, Mark and Justin.
They're my peers, but okay.
Well, I thought one of them was the Speaker of the House and the other one was the Minority Leader in the Senate. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. They are making the decisions. And the other thing I would invite you to do, if you should ever become the speaker, which I hope not, we're on opposite sides. I don't mean that as her as an individual, I mean her as a Democrat. I will tell you this, do not force your people, like you have been for the last 5 years, of voting the way you tell them. That is the worst thing you can do in a democracy.